A millionaire dresses like a beggar with his 8-year-old son, not to test others, but to find who still has a heart. Mark Tarrant rushed through his big house, searching for old clothes. 8-year-old Ethan appeared, holding a ripped shirt. "Dad, will the experiment really work?" "It will, son. Today we'll learn who truly has a kind heart." "But why can't we wear our regular clothes? When people see us dressed well, they act different." "Today, we'll see who helps from the heart." Mark grabbed soil from a flower pot and smeared it on his face. Ethan laughed as his dad messed up both their hair. "There, now no one will know us." They took the simplest car from the garage and drove toward Union Square. Mark chose a small spot near the subway exit. "Remember our plan, buddy? We're hungry and have nowhere to sleep." The first crowd passed fast. A woman in heels turned away. A man in a suit tossed a coin without looking. Ethan sighed. "Dad, people are mean." "No, son. They're just busy. We'll find someone special." More time passed. Many threw coins without stopping. Others walked by, pretending not to see. Ethan's face fell, when suddenly, a young woman stopped. She wore a blue cleaning uniform and worn sneakers. Her face was tired, but her eyes were gentle. "Are you two hungry?" she asked softly. Mark and Ethan froze. She was the first to actually stop and talk. The woman bent down to their level, not caring about the dirt on her knees. "Hold on," she said, opening a small, beaten purse. She counted coins and wrinkled bills. $14.25. It's all I have for the next 2 days." She smiled kindly at Ethan. "How? But a kid shouldn't go hungry," Ethan whispered. "Dad, she's like Mom in heaven." Mark's chest tightened. This woman had given all she had to strangers. "Thank you, miss. What's your name?" "Julia. Julia Parker." "And you?" "I'm Martin, and this is Ethan." Julia smiled at the boy. "Hi, Ethan. How old are you?" 8. "Aunt Julia." "What a polite boy." "There's a bakery on the corner. Get him a sandwich, okay?" She adjusted her bag. "Aren't you having lunch?" Mark asked. Julia shrugged. "I'll manage. What matters is the kid eats. I should get back to work before my boss yells, but when I'm off at 6, I'll come back to check on you." Mark couldn't believe it. She not only gave her money, she promised to return. "Thank you so much, Miss Julia. You're an angel." Julia smiled shyly. "I just did what anyone should. People help people. Right?" She waved and went into the office building. "Come on," Mark told Ethan. "We need to change." Back in the car, they cleaned up quickly and put on normal clothes. In 5 minutes, they looked like themselves again. "Let's see where she works," Mark said. "I want to know what kind of person she is when she's not helping strangers." "At the front desk," Mark asked. "Where's the cleaning staff office?" "3rd floor." "But they're working right now," said the guard. "Thanks. Just a quick question." "Upstairs." They spotted Julia talking to a tall security guard. "Please, mister." "Marcus, don't make them leave," Julia pleaded. "It's a dad. And his little boy." They looked hungry. "You know the policy, Julia," Marcus said. "Homeless folks scare clients." "I know. But when my shift ends, I'll help them find a place to stay. Just don't throw them out now. If anyone complains, tell them I asked you." Marcus sighed. "I gave them all my lunch money," Julia said softly. "But what else could I do?" The kid looked starving. "You're too kind, Julia." You barely make enough yourself. If we don't help when we can, then who will? She replied. Marcus sighed again. Fine. They can stay until you get off. But if someone complains, I'll handle it. Thank you, Mr. Marcus. You've got a good heart. Mark and Ethan listened, hidden behind a pillar. She had given her money, defended them, and risked her job. Julia went back to her cleaning cart, wiping every desk with care. Ethan tugged on Mark's sleeve. Dad, are you crying? Mark wiped his eyes. It's just we found her, son. The person we were looking for. At 6, Julia left work, looking exhausted. Her uniform was wrinkled, and her shoes were worn. Still, she stopped at the front desk. Mr. Marcus, are they still outside? They are, the dad said to thank you. They could buy food. That's good. I'll check on them before heading home. Julia walked out, searching, not seeing them. She looked worried. Mark made a choice. Come on, Ethan. Let's talk to her. They approached. Julia turned, surprised. You two look so different. You found a place to wash up? Yeah, a friend let us use his shower. Mark lied. That's great. Did you get food for him? Yes. He ate well, Mark said, feeling guilty. Ethan stayed quiet, sensing something. I'm glad. Do you have a place to stay tonight? Not really. I'm from Newark. Came looking for work. Been out of luck lately. Julia nodded. It's hard, especially with a child. She paused. I don't have much space, but I've got a couch. You can sleep there tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure something out. Mark blinked. You'd invite strangers home? Of course. People help people. And Ethan is polite. He won't be trouble. You're really kind, Julia. Ethan smiled. How sweet. You like cartoons? I love Spider-Man. Perfect. You can watch while I make dinner. On the way, Mark remembered his wife's words in the hospital. Promise me, Mark. Find Ethan a real mother. One with a kind heart. I promise, he had said. Now, watching Julia smile at Ethan, he wondered if fate was answering. Julia, are you sure? I'm sure. And stop calling me miss, she laughed. I'm only 26. Sorry, Julia. That's better. 5. That's better. Come on, let's take the bus. During the ride, Mark noticed how she greeted the driver, helped an old lady, and comforted a crying kid. Her apartment was tiny, 2 rooms in the South Bronx. Simple, but spotless. Sorry it's small, she said, but it's clean and cozy. It's perfect, Julia. Thank you. Make yourselves comfortable. I'll make dinner. Mark looked around. Small plants on the windows. Family photos. Colorful cushions. Dad. Ethan whispered. Why don't we tell her the truth? She's nice. Mark sighed. It's complicated, son. We will, but not yet. He didn't know when. He only knew he was falling for a woman who didn't know who he really was. 3 months passed. Mark told Julia he'd found a job as a salesman and rented a room. In truth, he spent every free moment with her. Ethan adjusted easily, a rich boy at school, a normal kid with Julia. One Sunday, Mark helped Julia cook lunch. Ethan, stir the beans while I season the chicken, she said. Julia, Mark began. Can I ask something? Sure. Why did you help us that day? Julia paused. Do you want the nice answer or the real one? The real one. Because I've been there, she said quietly. Hungry. Alone. Homeless. When I was 15, my mom died. My dad was gone before that. My aunt took me in, but she didn't want me. She made me work and took my pay. How did you survive? By doing any job I could. Cleaning, kitchens, stores. I lived in shelters until I could rent this place. Some did, poor folks who shared what little they had. That's why I help others. Life can flip in a moment. Everyone deserves a chance. Just then, Ethan ran in. "Mommy, Julia, the cartoon ended." Julia laughed and hugged him. "Then let's eat." "Mommy, Julia?" Mark repeated, surprised. "He started calling me that last week." Julia blushed. "I told him he didn't have to." "I like it." Ethan grinned. "When you marry her, she'll be my real mom." Julia and Mark exchanged a look. "Ethan, wash your hands," Julia said, cheeks red. He ran off, leaving them alone. "Sorry," Mark said. "No need." Julia smiled softly. "Honestly," he said, stepping closer, "I've been thinking the same thing. These months with you and Ethan, they've been the happiest of my life. You made me feel like I have a family again." Her eyes shined. "Me too, Mark. You and Ethan filled my world with light." They kissed in the small kitchen, the smell of lunch around them. Later, they went to the rooftop. Ethan played with his toy car while they talked. "Julia, have you ever thought of leaving here? This is my better." She smiled. "This neighborhood took me in. Mrs. Francis lent me pots when I moved. Mr. Anthony let me buy food on credit. Here, we're family. When one struggles, everyone helps. When one's happy, everyone cheers." Mark nodded, feeling humbled. In his mansion, he didn't even know his neighbors. "You're special, Julia." "I'm not. I just learned that people help people. And money," she said quietly, "isn't everything." Mark felt guilt stab his heart. He had lied to the most genuine soul he'd ever met. "Julia, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" she asked, looking curious. Mark froze. He wanted to speak the truth but couldn't. "I love you," he whispered instead. Julia smiled softly. "I love you too, Mark." They kissed that night, and for the first time in a long while, Mark felt whole. But deep inside, a quiet voice asked, "How can I tell her the truth without losing her?" The next morning, Mark made a decision. He would tell Julia everything. He couldn't carry the lie any longer. He booked a table at a small restaurant downtown. Ethan was excited. His dad had told him that, after dinner, they would share a special secret. Julia arrived, looking radiant in a dress he hadn't seen before. "Wow, you look amazing. Is that new?" She smiled. "It is. I bought it this week. Spent money I didn't really have, but I wanted to look nice for you." Mark's heart tightened. She had spent money she didn't have. For him, a man who could buy 1,000 dresses like that. "You always look beautiful," he said gently. "You didn't need to spend a thing." "I wanted to," she replied, still smiling. At the restaurant, Ethan's eyes widened in wonder. "Dad, this place is fancy. The waiter even has a tie." Julia laughed softly. "It is fancy. You shouldn't have spent so much, Mark." Mark took a deep breath. His voice trembled. "Julia, there's something very important I need to tell you." Her expression changed. "What is it? You look strange." "It's about who I really am." He reached for her hand. "Julia, my real name isn't Mark Smith. It's Mark Tremont." Julia blinked, confused. "Tremont? What do you mean?" "I own Tremont Construction," he said slowly. "Julia, I'm a millionaire." Her face drained of color. She pulled her hand back. "Excuse me? That day in the square, Ethan and I were running a test," he said softly. "We disguised ourselves as homeless to see who truly had a kind heart." Julia just stared at him, unable to speak. "You were pretending?" she whispered. "You lied to me this whole time?" "Julia, please let me explain." She stood up, her legs shaking. "You lied for 3 months," she said, voice trembling. You made a fool out of me. It wasn't like that. Ethan stood too, scared. Mommy Julia, please don't be mad. Julia turned to the boy, tears forming. Ethan, did you know? He looked at his dad, unsure how to answer. Julia, please sit down. Let me explain. Explain what? That you used me for your experiment? That you laughed behind my back? I never played you. I fell in love with you. How can you talk about love? She shouted. You don't even know me. I do, he said softly. No, you know nothing but how to lie. People around them were starting to watch. Shame flushed Julia's cheeks. I gave you all the money I had. I skipped meals to help you. And it was all fake? It wasn't fake. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. She snapped. She grabbed her bag, tears falling fast. You're a rich man who gets his fun making poor people look stupid. Mommy Julia, don't go, Ethan cried. Julia looked at him, and her heart cracked in two. For a moment, she hesitated. Sweetheart, she said softly, kneeling to his height. Mommy Julia has to go. But you said you'd be my mom forever. Julia sobbed. I'm sorry, my love. I'm so sorry. She ran out, leaving Mark and Ethan at the table. The boy burst into tears. Mark quickly paid the bill and ran outside, searching the street for her. But she was gone, swallowed by the city crowd. When they reached home, Gordon Tremont was waiting in the living room. He saw Mark enter with Ethan crying in his arms. What happened? Why is the boy crying? Nothing you need to know, Mark said quietly. Mark, I'm your father. You can't shut me out. Ethan sniffled. Grandpa. Mommy Julia went away. She found out. Dad lied. Mommy Julia? Gordon frowned. Who is that? Mark sighed. A woman I met. A special woman. What kind of woman? A housekeeper. Mark replied softly. Gordon's face hardened. You're dating a housekeeper? I was, Mark said. She ended it. Gordon gave a cold smile. Good. That foolishness needed to stop. Dad, don't talk like that, Mark said firmly. Mark, you're heir to an empire. You can't play Romeo and Juliet with the help. She's not the help. She's the best person I've ever met. Maybe so, Gordon muttered. But it's over. And it's better that way. Mark picked up Ethan and carried him upstairs. Gordon stood alone, his face unreadable. After a moment, he reached for the phone. Hello, Sonia, he said coldly. I need you to find everything on a woman named Julia Parker. Address, job, it works. I want it by tomorrow morning. He hung up with a cruel smile. If his son wouldn't end this, he would. The next morning, Gordon's secretary entered his office carrying a folder. Mr. Tremont, here's the information you asked for. Close the door, he said. Tell me everything. Julia Parker, 26 years old. Sonia began. Works for Brightworks Cleaning. Lives in the South Bronx. Orphan since 15. No relatives. Lives paycheck to paycheck. No debts, but little savings. Perfect for a gold digger, Gordon muttered. She saw Mark and thought she'd found her ticket out. Sonia hesitated. Sir, actually everyone in her neighborhood speaks well of her. She helps with their kids, runs errands, even gives food away sometimes. That's just a show, Gordon said coldly. Poor women who get close to rich men always want one thing. He walked to the window. My son is naive. He thinks everyone's kind. I know better. What should I do? Sonia asked. Go to her company. Pretend to be a homeowner, looking for a cleaner. Offer her a job. A job? Why? If she's working for me, she'll forget Mark. And if she's under my control, I'll end this mess myself. Sonia nodded. How much should I offer? $3,000 a month, Gordon said. That's double what she makes. She won't refuse. And if she asks questions, tell her you're Mrs. Sylvia, wife of a business owner. Nothing strange. Don't mention my name." He smiled thinly. "And remember, this stays between us." Meanwhile, Julia sat in her neighbor Mrs. Francis's apartment. The 70-year-old woman studied her swollen eyes. "Honey, you didn't sleep at all, did you?" Julia shook her head. "I couldn't, Mrs. Francis. I kept thinking about everything." "Tell me properly," Mrs. Francis said. "Last night you came home in tears." Julia took a breath and told her everything. Day she met Mark in the square, the months they'd spent together, and how she found out it had all been a lie. "He deceived me," she whispered. "He made a fool out of me." Mrs. Francis frowned. "Hold on. The man lied about money, yes. But did he lie about his feelings too?" "How would I know?" Julia asked bitterly. "If he lied once, he could have lied about everything." The old woman shook her head. "I watched you for 3 months, child. You were happier than ever. And Ethan was. He pretending too." "Ethan is just a kid." "Exactly. Kids don't fake love. If he called you Mommy Julia, it's because he meant it." Julia wiped her eyes. "But how can I trust someone who began everything with a lie?" "I'm not saying forgive him right away," Mrs. Francis said softly. "I'm saying maybe it isn't as simple as you think." "It is simple. He's rich. I'm poor. To him I was just a game." A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Francis opened the door. A well-dressed woman stood there with a polite smile. "Good afternoon. Do you know Julia Parker?" "That's me," Julia said, standing. "Can I help you?" "Wonderful. I'm Sylvia," the woman said smoothly. "I'm looking for a housekeeper for my home. You came highly recommended." "By whom?" Julia asked. "By Mrs. Marcia, who works in the building you used to clean." "Oh, right," Julia nodded, though she didn't remember any Marcia. "The job is Monday to Friday, 8 hours a day. The pay is $3,000 a month." Julia's eyes widened. $3,000? "That's right," Sylvia said. "It's a big house, but I travel often. Most days you'll be alone." Mrs. Francis nudged Julia's arm. "Honey, that's double your last salary." Julia hesitated. She had lost her previous job after missing too many shifts while spending time with Mark. She needed money, badly. "Do you need references?" she asked. "No." Sylvia said quickly. "Mrs. Marcia already spoke well of you. Can you start tomorrow?" Julia hesitated again, but necessity won. "I can." "Perfect. Here's the address," Sylvia said, handing her a paper. "Upper East Side. 8A. M. Sharp. Ask for Mr. Gilbert." "Thank you," Julia said quietly. After the woman left, Mrs. Francis clapped her hands. "3,000, Julia. That's a blessing." Julia forced a smile. "It's strange, though. Why would someone pay that much for cleaning?" "Stop being suspicious," Mrs. Francis said kindly. "You deserve this chance." For the first time since the heartbreak, Julia smiled a little. "You're right. I'll take it." That night, Mark sat in Ethan's room. The boy wouldn't stop crying for Julia. "Dad, aren't you going to get her?" he asked. "It's not that simple, son. She's angry with me. But you can say sorry. I tried last night, remember?" She wouldn't listen. Ethan sat quietly for a moment, thinking hard. "Dad, why did you lie to her?" Mark sighed. "Because I wanted to be sure she liked us for who we are, not for our money. But she helped us when she thought we were poor," Ethan said softly. "Doesn't that already mean she's good?" Mark looked at him, stunned by his simple wisdom. "It does, doesn't it? So, go tell her you were dumb," Ethan said. "If you don't bring Mommy Julia back, I'll be sad forever." Mark hugged him tightly. I promise I'll try, buddy. I'll find a way to talk to her. But he had no idea how. The next morning, Julia arrived at the grand mansion written on the note. The gate was tall and electronic, and gardens spread on both sides of the path. The security guard called inside. The new housekeeper's here. Julia stepped through the service door, nervous but curious. A man in his 50s appeared, neat suit, sharp eyes, thin smile. You must be Julia, he said. Yes, sir. I'm Mr. Gilbert, he replied in a clipped tone. Let's go over the rules. Julia didn't know this was Gordon Tremont in disguise, wearing different glasses and styled hair. First rule, he said sternly. People work properly here. No laziness. Yes, sir. Second, I'm very demanding. If I have to repeat myself 3 times, you're gone. Julia frowned but nodded. She needed the job too much to argue. Third, no chatting with other staff. This is a quiet house. Understood. He led her through the vast rooms, 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, 3 living rooms. The house was larger than any place she had ever cleaned. You'll start with the dining room, Gordon said. I want it shining. Julia nodded and got to work. She polished the mahogany table, wiped every chair, and organized the crystal cabinet. An hour later, Gordon returned. What kind of cleaning is this? He barked. Look, a smudge. Julia looked closely. The spot was barely visible. I'm sorry, Mr. Gilbert. I'll clean it again. Do it right the first time. He snapped. Redo the whole room. Julia swallowed hard and started over. Another hour passed before he returned. The chairs aren't aligned, he said sharply. There's dust on the chandelier. But I cleaned the chandelier, she said gently. Then clean it again, he ordered. She climbed up, polished every glass piece until it sparkled, and wiped the table once more. Her back ached, but she kept going. When he returned again, he found another tiny fault. This isn't good enough, he said coldly. I expect perfection. Julia bit her tongue and nodded. All day she cleaned without rest. When she finally stopped, it was past 6. Gordon appeared once more. You can leave now, he said. Be here at 8 tomorrow. Julia gathered her bag, exhausted. Yes, sir. As she walked out, she glanced once more at the house. Something about it felt strange, too strict, too cold. But she needed the money. Outside, she waited at the bus stop, staring at the city lights. Her hands were rough from the chemicals, her heart still raw from pain. Yet somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered, Don't give up. Maybe life still has something kind waiting. And miles away, Mark stood on his balcony, holding Ethan close. We'll find her, son, he whispered. No matter what it takes. Ethan nodded sleepily, trusting his father. Neither of them knew that the person standing between them and Julia's heart was Gordon Tremont himself. Are you arguing with me? Gordon snapped. No, sir. I'm sorry, Julia said softly. She cleaned the same spot for the 3rd time. Her back already hurt, and it was only 10 in the morning. At lunch, Gordon told her coldly, Eat in the service area. There's food in the fridge. 15 minutes. Julia found a plain sandwich and a bottle of juice. She ate fast and returned to work without complaint. That afternoon, another test came. Julia, Gordon called. I dropped a plate in the kitchen. Clean it. When she walked in, food was splattered across the floor. It was clear he'd thrown it himself. Clean it well. Not a crumb left. Julia knelt and scrubbed the floor while he watched, a cruel smile twisting his lips. People like you were born to serve people like us, right? Julia froze, then looked up at him. What did you say? Nothing, he said lightly. Keep cleaning. On the bus home, she called Mrs. Francis. How was your first day, dear? Hard, Julia sighed. The boss is strict and cold, but for that pay, I guess it's worth it. I suppose, Mrs. Francis said, though she sounded unsure. Julia hung up but couldn't shake a heavy feeling in her chest. Something about the job felt wrong. The next morning, Gordon was worse. The master bathroom is a mess, he said. Make it, and shine. Julia climbed upstairs. The place was already spotless, but she cleaned it again. When she finished, Gordon walked in wearing muddy shoes. He stepped across the wet floor, leaving tracks. Look what a mess. Do it again. But sir, you just dirtied it. Are you accusing me? He cut in sharply. Julia took a deep breath. No, sir. I'll clean it. The third day was even harder. Today, I want all the windows washed. Inside and out, he ordered. There were more than 50. She spent the whole morning in the hot sun, her hands aching. Mid-afternoon, Gordon filled a bucket with dirty water and tossed it against a window she'd just finished. Oops. Careless, he said. Do that one again. Tears burned her eyes, but she stayed silent. What's the problem? He asked mockingly. People of your class shouldn't complain about honest work. Julia clenched her fists, swallowed her anger, and kept going. She needed the job too much to fight. I back. Gordon watched her from a distance, thinking, in a week she'll be so broken she won't even remember my son. At the end of that week, Julia was cleaning the living room when she noticed a framed photo on a table, a small boy with curly hair, maybe 5 years old. She picked it up, and her heart nearly stopped. It was Ethan. Find something interesting? A voice said behind her. She turned. Gordon stood in the doorway with a smug grin. Where do you know my grandson from? Your grandson? She whispered, her legs trembling. That's right, he said. I'm Gordon Tremont, Mark's father. Pleasure to meet you properly. The photo slipped from her shaking hands. You knew who I was? Of course, he said smoothly. You think this job was a coincidence? Why? Why would you do this to me? So, you'd learn your place, he said coldly. My son fooled himself about you. But I see what you really are. A woman who saw a rich man and thought she'd struck gold. Isn't that right? It's not true. Then why did you take this job for $3,000 a month? Why not refuse such an offer if you weren't greedy? Julia's lips parted, but no words came. That's what I thought. He sneered. You're just like the rest, always chasing money. You don't know me, she whispered. Oh, I know your type, Gordon said. My son is naive, but I'm not. I know exactly how the world works. At that moment, the front door opened. Dad, I need to talk to you about Julia, Mark's voice called. He walked into the room and froze. Julia, what are you doing here? Working for your father, she said bitterly. Where else would a housekeeper be? Son, Gordon said with fake warmth. This is Julia, one of my employees. Very hardworking. Mark looked from his father to Julia. You knew it was her? Of course, Gordon said. I hired her for that reason. What? Mark's voice rose. To show you both where she belongs, Gordon said calmly. In our family. Julia grabbed her bucket and rag. If you'll excuse me, I have work to finish. Julia, wait. Mark started. There's nothing to say, sir. She interrupted, her voice shaking. But I can explain. Explain what? That you brought me here so your father could humiliate me? So he could remind me I'm the help? I didn't know you were working here, Mark said quickly. You didn't? She let out a bitter laugh. Of course not. Why would a millionaire keep track of a poor housekeeper? Gordon stood back, watching them like it was entertainment. Julia, please, Mark said. Just listen. No. She stepped away from him. I've listened enough. I listened to your lies for 3 months. No more. Now I finally know my place. Your father made sure of it. She turned and ran toward the kitchen. Mark followed. Julia, my father doesn't speak for me. No? Then why didn't you say anything when he called me a servant? Mark opened his mouth, but no words came. That's what I thought, she said coldly. You're just like him. I'm not. You are. The only difference is your father's honest about his hate. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door. Where are you going? I won't stay here to be humiliated. Keep your job, Mr. Tremont. I may be poor, but I still have dignity. The door slammed behind her. Mark stood in silence, his chest heavy with guilt. Gordon folded his arms. See? I told you she only wanted money. The moment things got hard, she ran. You did this on purpose, Mark said quietly. I did. And I do it again. Now you've seen her true colors. The only thing I saw, Mark said through clenched teeth, was you humiliating a good woman. Jonah, Gordon began. But Mark had already turned away. He stormed out, leaving his father smirking behind him. Gordon leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Julia would never forgive his son now. In the days that followed, Gordon set his next plan in motion. He knew Mark still loved Julia and might try to win her back. He had to make sure that never happened. One cloudy afternoon, Gordon parked his luxury car a few blocks from the South Bronx. He walked the rest of the way, blending in with the crowd. Julia's building looked the same: cracked paint, rusted railings, and hanging laundry. When she opened the door, her eyes went cold. What do you want? I just want to talk, he said. Then say it from there. I came to warn you about something, he said softly, pretending concern. She folded her arms. What thing? My son Mark. He's engaged to Helena Davis. Their wedding's in December. Julia's heart twisted painfully, but she stood still, hiding it. What does that have to do with me? Nothing, Gordon said, all smoothly. I just thought you shouldn't get your hopes up. He pulled out his phone and showed her photos. Mark, at formal events with a beautiful blonde woman. These were taken last night, he said. They went to a restaurant, opening together. Julia stared at the pictures. Mark was smiling beside Helena, relaxed and confident, like a man in love. As I said, Gordon continued, don't get any illusions. I don't have any, she said quietly. Good, he said. Then we understand each other. He turned and walked away, leaving Julia trembling. She didn't know those photos were 2 years old, long before she'd ever met Mark. That same day, Gordon went to Mark's office. Son, he began casually, about that housekeeper. I don't want to talk about Julia, Mark said flatly. You need to, Gordon insisted. She's telling people you dated her. She's using your name. Mark frowned. What? That's not true. She's saying you promised to marry her. That you helped her get store credit and loans. I've been getting calls from people demanding payment for her debts. I don't believe you, Mark said, shaking his head. You're too trusting, Gordon replied calmly. She saw an opportunity and took it. He opened a folder and laid out some papers. 3 loans in your name. She forged your signature. The documents were fake, but Mark didn't know that. She said you'd pay them off after the wedding. Gordon added, twisting the knife. Mark stared at the papers, his chest tightening. I can't believe this, he whispered. Believe it, Gordon said quietly. I tried to warn you. Women like her only bring trouble. Mark sat down, his thoughts spinning. He wanted to deny it, but the proof was in front of him. What should I do? He asked weakly. Nothing, Gordon said. Ignore her. She'll stop when she can't get anything more. Meanwhile, across town, Julia was with Mrs. Francis again. He showed me photos, Julia said, voice cracking. Mark, with some rich woman. They're getting married in December. Mrs. Francis sighed deeply. Oh, honey, what a heartache. I knew it, Julia said bitterly. Rich men don't marry housekeepers. But you said he loved you. Love? Julia laughed sadly. He was just playing. Now he's back to his world. What if you talk to him? Explain your side. There's nothing to explain, Julia said, wiping her eyes. He lied from the start. It's over. It's better this way. I never belonged in his world. Mrs. Francis shook her head, but said nothing more. Julia didn't know that Mark was hurting just as much, and that every word Gordon had said was a lie. 2 weeks later, Gordon realized his plan wasn't complete. Mark was still quiet at work, asking employees if they'd seen Julia. And Ethan, sweet little Ethan, wouldn't. Stop crying for Mommy Julia. I need one last move, Gordon thought. Something to make Mark hate her forever. He called Sonia. One more favor, he said. What is it, sir? Find Julia again. Make up a story and bring her back to the house. She won't come. She will, he said coldly. Offer $5,000 for a weekend cleaning job. No poor woman refuses that. On Saturday morning, Sonia, again pretending to be Sylvia, rang Julia's doorbell. Julia opened it warily. What do you want? I have a proposal, Sonia said sweetly. A weekend job. $5,000 for 2 days. $5,000? Julia gasped. Yes. My husband's hosting a party Monday. The house must be perfect. What kind of work? Deep cleaning, Sonia said. Polishing silver, organizing crystal, heavy stuff. But it pays well. And will Mr. Gilbert be there? No, he's traveling. It'll just be you and me. Julia hesitated. The money was too much, but she needed it. She took a deep breath. I'll do it. Saturday morning. She arrived at the mansion. The air smelled of wax and polish. Sonia greeted her, polite but distant. Start in the dining room, she instructed. Then the living room. Mr. Gilbert wants everything spotless. I thought he was traveling, Julia said. He is, Sonia replied smoothly. But he left instructions. Julia rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She scrubbed, polished, and dusted until the whole room sparkled. Every silver fork shone. Every crystal gleamed like glass fire. By mid-afternoon, Sonia slipped away without saying goodbye. Julia didn't think much of it. At 5 o'clock, Gordon appeared in the dining room, holding an expensive gold watch. Julia, he said with a fake smile. Glad you came. I thought you were traveling, she said, instantly tense. Change of plans. I just came to pick something up. He set the watch on the table. Keep working. Don't mind me. Julia nodded and returned to polishing. After a while, she went to the kitchen to get more supplies. When she returned, the watch was gone. Weird, she thought. He must have taken it. At 6, she was finishing up when the front door opened again. Gordon walked in this time with Mark beside him. Son, Gordon said, I wanted to show you something. Mark stepped into the room and froze when he saw her. Julia? What are you doing here? Working, she said, confused. Mrs. Sylvia hired me for a weekend cleaning job. Mrs. Sylvia? Mark began, but Gordon cut him off. That's not the point, Julia, he said firmly. Where's the watch I left on this table? Julia blinked. What watch? A gold watch, Gordon said, his voice rising. I set it right here before I stepped out. Julia's heart began to pound. I didn't see any watch. That's strange, Gordon said coldly. It was here. When I left, and you were the only one in the room. Mark looked between them, shocked and unsure. Dad, stop. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Gordon said darkly. Call security. Let's check her bag. Julia's face went pale. You think I stole it? I don't know, Mr. Tremont, Julia said, her voice shaking. When I came back from the kitchen, the watch was gone. Interesting, Gordon murmured, pretending to think. You and I were the only ones in the house. You're implying I took it? She asked, stunned. I'm not implying anything, he said coldly. I'm stating a fact. The watch is missing. Mark watched them, confused and tense. May I search your bag? Gordon asked. You can search everything, Julia said firmly, placing her bag on the table. Go ahead. Gordon rummaged through her things, and moments later, he pulled out the gold watch. Look what I found, he said triumphantly. Julia froze in disbelief. I didn't put that there. Someone must have. Oh, really? Gordon asked mockingly. And who would that be? You, she cried. You planted it. Gordon's expression turned to fake outrage. Why would I do such a thing? Mark stared between them, his mind spinning. He looked at the watch in his father's hand, then back at Julia. Julia, how did that get into your bag? I don't know, Mark. I swear I didn't take it. Gordon sighed, his tone full of false sadness. Son, I hate that you had to see this. But now you finally know who she really is. I didn't steal it, Julia pleaded. He set me up. Mark looked into her eyes. For a second, he hesitated, but weeks of his father's lies had already poisoned his trust. Julia, he said quietly, I'm disappointed. I really thought you were different. You believe I'd do that? She said, her voice trembling. The proof is right here, he said, staring at the watch. Her world shattered. So that's it? After everything, you believe him instead of me? Julia. Say no more, she said bitterly, grabbing her things. I understand perfectly. Where are you going? Mark asked, panic in his voice. Out. And this, that time, forever. The door slammed behind her. Mark stood frozen, while Gordon gave him a sympathetic pat on the shoulder. Son, I know it's hard, but better to find out now. She seemed sincere, but people like that are great actors. That's why I warned you. Mark shook his head slowly. Broken. Come on, Gordon said, leading him away. Tomorrow. Buy Ethan a new phone. It'll help distract him. They walked out together. Gordon hid a smile of triumph. His plan had worked perfectly. Mark would never want to see Julia again. Out on the cold sidewalk, Julia walked aimlessly, tears streaming down her face. She felt she had lost everything the man she loved, and her faith in goodness itself. What she didn't know was that a small pair of eyes had seen everything. From the staircase, 8-year-old Ethan Tremont had watched the entire scene. And that day, he learned that his grandfather was not the good man everyone thought he was. A month later, Julia's life had fallen apart. Gordon had spread word across the city that she was a thief. Every company turned her away. I'm sorry, Julia, but I can't bring you on, said Ronald, the owner of a small cleaning service. I got a call saying you steal from employers. Mr. Ronald, you've known me for years, she pleaded. I know, but I can't risk my business, he said, looking away. Julia left the office crushed. It was her 5th rejection that week. Back home, Mrs. Francis watched her with worry. Child, you're not eating. You look so thin. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten in 2 days. Julia sighed. She could only find small day jobs, $15, maybe $20, barely enough for food. Mrs. Francis, I think I'll have to go back upstate. What? Why? I can't get work here. No one will hire me. Your life is here, honey. What life? Everyone thinks I'm a thief. Suddenly, Julia groaned, and pressed a hand to her stomach. "What's wrong?" Mrs. Francis asked. "I feel dizzy," Julia said weakly. "It must be hunger." Mrs. Francis made her sit down and brought tea, but the dizziness didn't fade. Moments later, Julia collapsed onto the sofa. "Help! Somebody help!" Mrs. Francis shouted. Neighbors rushed in and carried her to the community clinic. "Miss Parker," the doctor said, "when was your last period?" "2 months ago," Julia murmured. "But it's probably stress. I'll order a blood test," the doctor said. "Based on your symptoms, you might be pregnant." An hour later, the results came back. "Congratulations," the doctor said gently. "You're 1 month along." Julia stared at him, stunned. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," he said. "You're pregnant." She didn't know whether to cry or smile. She was carrying Mark's child, but he wanted nothing to do with her. "Doctor," she whispered, "what if I can't afford to raise a baby?" "And you need proper nutrition," he said. "The baby needs it. We can give you free prenatal care through our community program, but you must eat better." Julia nodded silently, clutching the test result in her trembling hand. When she returned home, Mrs. Francis rushed over. "What did the doctor say?" "I'm pregnant," Julia said softly. Mrs. Francis's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, my dear, what joy! I'll be the honorary grandma." Julia sat down, still in shock. "How am I supposed to raise a child like this? I barely have food." "We'll manage, kid. We always do." "This time is different," Julia said, her voice breaking. "It's not just me anymore. It's an innocent baby." She looked down at the paper in her hands. "How do I tell Mark? He hates me." "A child is a child," Mrs. Francis said gently. "He deserves to know." "No," Julia said firmly. "He'll think I made it up for money." She folded the test and hid it away. "No, one can know not yet." Meanwhile, Mark sat in Ethan's room. The boy now had a new phone, but his smile was gone. "Dad," Ethan asked quietly, "why doesn't Mommy Julia come anymore?" "Son, we've talked about this," Mark said, forcing calm. "Mommy Julia isn't coming back." "But she was so nice," Ethan said sadly. "It's complicated, buddy. Sometimes people aren't what they seem." "I think she's good," Ethan said stubbornly. "I know you liked her." "I did too," Mark sighed. "Sometimes people disappoint us." "Dad, do you still love her?" Ethan asked. Mark hesitated. "Do you, or don't you? Tell the truth." Mark looked at his son's hopeful face and finally whispered, "I do. Even after everything." Ethan's eyes brightened. "Then, why don't you go after her?" "I can't. Son, too much has happened." "But if you love each other..." "She doesn't love me anymore." "I'm sure she still loves us," Ethan said softly. The next week, Ethan fell seriously ill. He developed a terrible cough, a high fever, and trouble breathing. Mark rushed him to the hospital. "Doctor, my son's coughing badly," he said anxiously. After the exam, the doctor looked grave. "It's pneumonia. He'll need to be admitted." "Admitted?" Mark repeated, panicked. "Yes, his lungs are compromised." Ethan was moved to a hospital bed, pale and weak. The fever wouldn't break. He tossed and turned, whispering through cracked lips, "Mommy Julia. Where's Mommy Julia?" Mark sat beside him, helpless. "Son, Daddy's here." "I want Mommy Julia," Ethan murmured. "She used to sing to me." "She can't come," Mark said sadly. "Why? She doesn't like me anymore?" Mark had no answer. He just held his son's hand as tears filled his eyes. "Doctor," Mark asked, "will he be okay?" "We're doing everything we can," the doctor said. "But he's very weak. Sometimes, children respond better when the person they're asking for is present." "What do you mean?" "He keeps calling for someone named Mommy Julia. Would it be possible to bring her?" Mark's heart clenched. It's complicated. Mr. Tremont, the doctor said gently, your son's condition could get worse. If there's someone who can help him, bring her. Mark stepped into the hall and called his father. Dad, Ethan's very sick. He keeps calling for Julia. Gordon's voice turned sharp. You're not thinking of calling her, are you? I don't know what else to do, Mark said. The doctor says he could die. Don't do it, son. You're desperate. You're not thinking straight. Mark's voice broke. If Ethan doesn't make it, how will I ever forgive myself? Gordon swallowed hard. His plan would collapse if Julia returned. Listen to me. You can't trust that woman. Maybe it's time I trust my heart. Mark said and hung up. He stood outside the hospital for a moment, then rushed to his car. Pride meant nothing now, only fear of losing his child. He drove straight to the old neighborhood and knocked on Mrs. Francis's door. She opened. Surprised. Mark Tremont? Mark? I need Julia. It's urgent. She's not here. She's working for Mrs. Carmone on the Upper West Side. He grabbed the address and drove off like a man possessed. At Mrs. Carmone's apartment, Julia was cleaning crystal when her employer came in. Julia, there's a man here to see you, she said. Julia turned and froze. Mark stood in the doorway, eyes red from sleepless nights. Her heart pounded. What are you doing here? Julia, I know you hate me, but Ethan's very sick, he said quickly. She dropped the cloth. Ethan? What happened? Severe pneumonia. He's in the hospital, asking for you. The doctor says he could die. Julia went pale. Is he going to be okay? I know, Mark said, his voice trembling. Without hesitation, she said, take me to him. Now. After everything that happened, will you still come? I love that boy, like he's my own. Of course I'll come. Mrs. Carmone appeared at the door. Go, Julia. I'll pay you for the day anyway. Minutes later, they were in Mark's car racing through the city. How did he get so sick? She asked, clutching her bag. I don't know, Mark said. He was so sad. He stopped eating. Stopped playing. Sad? Why? Mark glanced sideways. Because of you. Julia looked out the window, fighting tears. She thought of the tiny life growing inside her. At the hospital, she ran through the corridor before Mark could even park properly. Ethan lay pale and still, tubes running from his nose and arms. Julia's heart broke. Oh God, Ethan, she whispered, grabbing his small hand. It's Mommy Julia. I'm here, my love. His eyelids fluttered. Mommy Julia, you came back. I did. My prince. I'm not leaving until you're better. I thought you didn't like me anymore, he murmured. How could you think that? I love you more than anything. Then why did you go away? That was adult stuff. Sweetheart. It doesn't matter now. Ethan gave a weak smile, the first in days. Will you stay? I will, she said. They'll have to drag me out. Mark stood in the doorway, frozen. In just a few minutes, Julia had done what medicine hadn't. Ethan's breathing eased. His pulse steadied. Mommy Julia, sing my song, Ethan whispered. Of course, my love. She began softly, humming his favorite tune. Ethan's body relaxed. His fever dropped. The doctor came in, astonished. His vitals are improving quickly. Julia looked up. Will he be okay? If he keeps this up? Yes. The doctor said. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Mark smiled faintly. Mommy Julia just got here. Then she should stay, the doctor said. Sometimes love is the best medicine. That night, Julia stayed beside Ethan's bed, telling stories and stroking his hair. Mark sat in the corner watching silently. He saw how gently she cared, how real her love was. The woman his father had called a liar looked like an angel now. By the second day, Ethan was much better. He laughed, ate soup, and played with his toy cars. "Mommy Julia, why did you and Daddy fight?" he asked innocently. Julia looked at Mark, unsure what to say. "It's complicated, sweetheart," she said. "But you love each other, right? I can tell." Julia blushed, and Mark did too. "Son," Mark said softly, "it's not that simple." "Why not? If you love each other, you get married." "Because some things happened," Mark said awkwardly. "What things?" Ethan asked, wide-eyed. Mark sighed. "Adult things." Ethan frowned. "Adults make everything hard." Julia laughed quietly. "He's right about that." When Ethan drifted to sleep again, silence filled the room. Mark spoke first. "I owe you an apology." Julia looked at him, cautious. "For believing my father," he said. "For not trusting you." She didn't answer. "I should have known you'd never steal," he continued. "I was blind," Julia finally said. "You broke something inside me, Mark." "I know," he said softly. "And I'll spend my life trying to fix it, if you let me." Her eyes filled with tears. "It's not that easy. Tell me what to do," he pleaded. Before she could reply, Gordon walked in. "Mark," he said stiffly. "A nurse called. I heard Ethan's better." He froze when he saw Julia by the bed. "What is she doing here?" Mark rose. "She's the reason he's better." "She has no right to be near my grandson," Gordon barked. "Stop," Mark said sharply. "Enough lies. She's staying." Gordon's face darkened. "After everything she did?" "She didn't do anything," Mark said coldly. "You did." Julia stood quietly, holding Ethan's hand. "What are you talking about?" Gordon asked, forcing a laugh. "I know about the fake loans, the photos, the watch. I know you framed her." Gordon paled. "That's nonsense. Ethan told me everything," Mark said. "He saw you put the watch in her bag." "What?" Julia gasped. "Yes," Mark said. "He saw the whole thing from the stairs." Gordon's voice cracked. "You'll believe an 8-year-old over your father?" "Yes," Mark said firmly. "Because he tells the truth." For the first time, Gordon had no words. His lies collapsed under their weight. "You've ruined enough lives," Mark said. "Leave before security removes you." Gordon glared at Julia, but she met his stare calmly. Then he turned and walked out, defeated. Mark turned back to Julia. "I'm sorry you had to go through all that." She shook her head. "It's over now." "Not yet," Mark said gently. "There's one more thing you should tell me." "What's that?" "Why did you look so pale when you came to the hospital?" Julia hesitated. "I didn't want to burden you." "Tell me," he said. She took a breath. "I'm pregnant, Mark." He froze, his mind blank. "You're... what?" "1 month when I found out. I didn't plan to tell you." He stepped closer, eyes wide. "Julia, that's our baby?" "Yes." He smiled through tears. "After everything, life still gave us a miracle." Julia began to cry. "I didn't know how to raise a child alone." "You won't," he said, taking her hands. "We'll raise both our children together." Ethan stirred and opened his eyes. "Daddy? Mommy Julia? Are you happy now?" Mark laughed softly. "We are, buddy." Ethan smiled sleepily. "Good. Then I can sleep." He closed his eyes peacefully. Julia leaned against Mark's shoulder. And, for the first time in months, she felt safe. Outside the room, Mrs. Francis arrived carrying flowers. She peeked through the glass, smiling when she saw the little family together again. Inside, Mark whispered, "Julia, I don't deserve you." "Maybe not," she said gently. "But love isn't about deserving. It's about forgiveness." He kissed her forehead. "Then thank you for forgiving me." Thank Ethan, she said. He never stopped believing. Mark looked at his sleeping son, and then at Julia's gentle smile. For the first time, he realized that true love wasn't about wealth or power. It was about faith, kindness, and the courage to start again. Outside, the sun rose over the city, and inside that small hospital room, 3 hearts finally found their way home. Some things you wouldn't understand, Julia said softly. Ethan grew serious. Dad, can I tell you a secret? Mark smiled faintly. What secret, buddy? Can I say it in front of Mommy Julia? You can, Mark said. I know Grandpa lied about her, Ethan said. Mark's face tightened. What did you just say? I heard him on the phone. He said Mommy Julia was a thief. Then he laughed and said, It's not a lie. Well, not a complete lie. Mark felt the floor tilt beneath him. Are you sure about that? I'm sure, Ethan said firmly. And I recorded it. You what? Mark asked. Shocked. Ethan pulled out his phone. Want to hear it? Mark took the phone with trembling hands, pressed play, and listened. His face went pale as the recording played his father's voice, cold and cruel. My God, Mark whispered. When did you record this? Right after Mommy Julia left, Ethan said. Julia's eyes widened. So it was all a setup. Julia, Mark began, his voice cracking. You don't have to say anything, she said gently. You believed your father. He's your family. I should have. I trusted you, he said, tears in his eyes. Let's leave it. The important thing is Ethan. I can't leave it, Mark said. He reached for her hand. Forgive me. I was blind. Please forgive me. I love you. Julia met his gaze, her heart trembling. I love you too, she whispered. I never stopped. Ethan's face lit up. Then you're getting back together? Mark chuckled nervously. Son, it's not that simple. It is, Ethan grinned. You love each other. I love you both. Done. Julia laughed through tears. If only it were that simple. It is that simple, Ethan insisted. Mommy Julia, marry my dad. Julia flushed. Ethan. Dad, ask her, Ethan said excitedly. Mark turned toward Julia, his voice shaking. Julia, will you marry me? She blinked. Are you asking because Ethan told you to? No, he said softly. I'm asking because I love you, and I don't want to live without you. Julia hesitated, then whispered, I have to tell you something first. What is it? She took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. Mark froze. Pregnant. The baby is yours. Ethan bounced on the bed. I'm getting a baby brother. Mark smiled weakly, still trying to process. Why didn't you tell me? Because you hated me, Julia said. I thought you'd say I made it up for money. Julia, he said, taking her hand. Forgive me for every doubt, for every wound I caused. She whispered. Forgive me for hiding the pregnancy. He pulled her close. Ethan clapped happily. Now I'll have a mom, a dad, and a baby brother. The next morning, Ethan was discharged. On the way out, Mark spoke quietly. Julia, come home with me. I need to settle things with my father. I don't know if that's a good idea, she said. It is, he said firmly. He has to answer for what he did. Will Grandpa be mad? Ethan asked from the back seat. He will, Mark said. But sometimes, we must face people who do wrong. At the mansion, Gordon sat in his office. When he heard the car pull up, he walked to the front door and froze. Mark entered with Julia and Ethan beside him. What is the meaning of this? He barked. Why is that woman in my house? Because we need to talk, Mark said. I have nothing to say in front of her. You have plenty, Mark replied, leading them into the living room. Gordon followed, fuming. Jonah, have you lost your mind? Sit down, Dad. I won't. Not after what she... Sit down, Mark repeated, his voice sharp. Daniel Ethan stepped forward bravely. Grandpa, I want you to hear something. What is it, kiddo? Gordon asked, trying to smile. Ethan tapped his phone. Listen. The room filled with Gordon's voice from the recording. Tell everyone not to hire her. Because she... steals. It's not a lie. Well, not a complete lie. The color drained from Gordon's face. Ethan, he said hoarsely. Where did you get that? I recorded you on the phone, Ethan said simply. Dad, Mark said, his tone hard as stone. Explain this recording. I can explain, Gordon said quickly. Explain how something isn't a complete lie. Gordon's mouth opened, but no sound came. You set Julia up, Mark said, rising to his feet. You made her look like a thief. Jonah, I did it for your sake, Gordon said desperately. For my sake? Mark's voice thundered. You destroyed an innocent woman's life. She's no good, Gordon shouted. She's a gold digger. Mark's eyes burned. A gold digger? She's 4 months pregnant and didn't even tell me. If she wanted money, she wouldn't have hidden it. Gordon turned toward Julia, shocked. Pregnant? Yes, Mark said, stepping closer. And even then, she didn't come after me. She just wanted peace. Gordon stammered. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Mark said. You lied. You manipulated. And you destroyed our happiness because you couldn't see beyond your pride. It wasn't pride, it was protection. Protection from what? Mark demanded. From a woman who loves Ethan more than her own life? Gordon's eyes darted to Julia. Aren't you going to say anything? Julia stood, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice calm. You humiliated me, persecuted me, spread lies, and nearly starved me, she said quietly. But you know what? I forgive you. Gordon blinked. Forgive me? Yes, Julia said, her voice steady now. Because holding on to anger only hurts me. And I want to be happy with my family. Mark put his arm around her. From today on, Dad, things will be different. How so? Gordon asked bitterly. Julia will be my wife, the mother of my children, and you will respect her. And if I don't, then you'll lose your son, Mark said coldly, and spend the rest of your life alone. Gordon fell silent. He looked at Julia, then at Ethan, and saw only love and truth staring back at him. He had lost. Mark turned toward his family. Let's go, he said softly. We have a wedding to plan. A month later, Mark visited Julia at Mrs. Carmen's apartment. She was 5 months along, her belly beginning to show. Julia, he said, stepping inside, I need to ask you something. What is it? She asked. Marry me, he said. Julia stopped wiping the table. Startled. Mark, let me finish, he said. I know I hurt you. I doubted you when I should have trusted you. But I love you. And I know you love me. So why wait? She sighed. Because I'm scared, Mark. Scared of being hurt again. You won't, he said firmly. I promise. How can you promise? She asked softly. Because my father no longer controls my life. He knows he's lost my respect. He's still your father. And you'll be my wife, the mother of my children. That matters more. She placed a hand on her belly. What if he tries to come between us again? He won't succeed. I know who he really is now. That's not my only worry. she admitted. What else? He asked gently. I'm a poor housekeeper. Pregnant. Living in the projects. You're a millionaire. How does that even work? Do you think I care about that? Mark said. You don't, she replied. But what about everyone else, your friends, your business partners? He grinned. I don't care about them either. Sorry to be blunt, but that's the truth. Julia laughed for the first time in days. You almost said a bad word. Almost, he said, smiling. But I meant every word. It's going to be hard, you know, she said quietly. I know, Mark said, but we'll face it together. Just then, Ethan burst into the room, out of breath. Mommy Julia. Dad. You're here, he shouted happily. She turned, smiling wide. Hey, sweetheart. Mommy Julia, are you going to marry my dad? I'm still thinking about it, sweetheart. Why? You love each other. It's complicated, Julia said, smiling faintly. It's not complicated at all, Ethan insisted. He turned to Mark. Dad, tell her we're going to be a family. Mark knelt beside him. Mommy Julia needs to be sure first, buddy. Sure of what? That everything will be okay, Mark said. Ethan's eyes shone. Mommy Julia, I promise I'll take care of you and my baby brother forever. Julia's eyes filled with tears. Oh, sweetheart. And Dad promises too, right? Ethan said. I promise, Mark replied, squeezing Julia's hand. Ethan looked up at her again. And you promise? You'll never leave out us? Julia looked from Ethan to Mark. I promise. Ethan clapped. Then it's decided. You're getting married. Julia laughed, wiping her tears. Okay. Okay. I'll marry your dad. Mark's face lit up. Really? Really, she said. But only on one condition. What's that? He asked. The wedding will be simple. No over-the-top luxury. Mark smiled. However you want it. Ethan jumped in joy. I'll finally have a real family. Mrs. Carmen stepped into the room, smiling at the commotion. What's all the noise about? They're getting married, Ethan shouted. Mrs. Carmen gasped. That's wonderful news. Congratulations. Julia smiled warmly. Thank you for everything, Mrs. Carmen. You deserve happiness, she said kindly. Take good care of each other. We will, Mark promised. On the way home, Ethan chattered non-stop from the back seat. Dad, when's the wedding? I don't know yet. We still have to plan it, Mark said. Next week, Ethan insisted. Easy there, Julia laughed. Weddings take time, but I want it soon, he said. Why? She teased. So everyone will know you're really my mom now. Julia blinked back tears. You already thought of me as your mom from the first day, didn't you? Ethan grinned. I did. They laughed together, and for the first time, everything felt right. After a pause, Ethan said quietly, Dad, can I tell you something? Sure, buddy. Grandpa's really sad since that day. Mark frowned. How do you know? He almost never leaves his room. When he does, he looks angry. Mark sighed. Your grandpa's going through a hard time. Why? Ethan asked. Because he did bad things and now he's sorry. Has he said sorry to Mommy Julia? Ethan asked. Julia looked down. Not yet. Then he needs to, Ethan said firmly. When I do something wrong, you make me say, sorry. Julia smiled sadly. Your grandpa's proud. It's hard for him to admit he's wrong. Ethan crossed his arms. If he doesn't say sorry, how will we all get along? Mark said gently. We'll find our own way, son. But you're right, it would be better if he apologized. They exchanged a look, knowing the child had spoken pure truth, but neither believed Gordon would ever humble himself. 2 weeks later, the wedding preparations were in full swing. Julia, now 5.5 months along, was glowing. Mrs. Francis helped her choose a dress. "Kid, you look beautiful," she said, teary-eyed. "Pregnant and a bride, what joy." Julia smiled. "Thank you, Mrs. Francis. You're family to me." "And you to me," the old woman said warmly. Julia tried on a simple, elegant white dress. She turned toward the mirror and smiled. "Perfect," she whispered. Mrs. Francis beamed. "You'll be the prettiest bride in New York." Meanwhile, at the office, Mark was buried in work when Ethan burst through the door, phone in hand. "Dad, can I show you something?" Mark smiled. "Of course. What is it?" "Remember the recording I made of Grandpa?" "I remember," Mark said cautiously. "There's more," Ethan said. Mark frowned. "What do you mean, more?" Ethan pressed play. Gordon's voice filled the room. "Hello, Dr. Carter. I need a favor. It's about my son. He's marrying a woman who isn't worthy. I want you to investigate her debts, trouble with the law, anything. I don't care what it costs. Find something that proves she's not good enough for my family. And if you can't find anything, make something up. It's not the first time we've done this." Mark stopped the audio, face red with fury. "He never quits," he muttered. "Dad," Ethan said softly, "Grandpa is really bad, isn't he?" Mark sighed heavily. "He's done terrible things." "Yes, but he's still my father." "Are you going to tell Mommy Julia?" "Yes," Mark said, "but not today. I don't want this to ruin her joy." That night, Mark sat alone on the balcony, thinking about everything. The lies, the damage, the forgiveness Julia had already shown. How do you forgive someone who keeps breaking hearts? He thought. 2 days before the wedding, Julia was at home, sewing a small ribbon on Ethan's tuxedo. He sat beside her, curious. "What are you doing, Mommy Julia?" "Adding a little touch of love." She smiled. "So you'll look perfect. Will Grandpa come to the wedding?" Julia hesitated. 1. "I don't know." "He should," Ethan said seriously. "Families should stay together." Julia brushed his hair gently. "You're wise beyond your years, sweetheart." On the morning of the wedding, the sun rose golden over the city. The ceremony was to be held in a small garden behind the Tremont mansion. Julia didn't want grandeur, just sincerity. White chairs lined the aisle. Flowers hung from archways. Ethan ran between rows, placing ribbons on chairs. When Julia arrived in her dress, everyone fell silent. Even Gordon, standing at the back, looked struck by her grace. Mrs. Francis whispered, "That's our girl." Mark turned as Julia walked down the aisle, radiant, hand trembling slightly. Their eyes met, and everything else disappeared. Ethan stood between them, grinning wide. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, "we gather here to unite Mark Tremont and Julia Parker in marriage." As the words continued, Julia's heart pounded. When it was her turn to speak, her voice trembled. "I never believed love could survive betrayal," she said, looking into Mark's eyes. "But forgiveness can heal anything and love can start again." Mark's eyes filled with tears. "I once thought money could buy peace," he said softly. "But the only real treasure is standing right in front of me." When they exchanged rings, Ethan clapped and shouted, "Finally!" Everyone laughed. As the ceremony ended, Julia turned and saw Gordon standing alone under a tree, his expression unreadable. She hesitated, then walked toward him. Mark watched, unsure what she would do. Gordon looked old, smaller than she remembered. "Julia," he said, his voice low. She smiled faintly. "You came." "I almost didn't," he admitted. "Why did you?" He swallowed hard. "Because my grandson told me I should say sorry." Julia's eyes softened. "And will you?" "I already am," he said quietly. "I was wrong. About everything." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Thank you." Mark approached, and placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "Dad," he said gently, "that's all we ever needed to hear." Ethan ran over and hugged his grandfather's leg. "See? I told you saying sorry makes people happy." Gordon smiled weakly, ruffling his hair. "You were right, little man." Later, as music filled the garden, Julia danced slowly with Mark, the evening glow wrapping around them. "I never thought we'd get here," she whispered. "Me neither," Mark said. "But we did. What about your father? He'll change for Ethan. For us." Julia looked around, seeing Gordon laugh faintly with Mrs. Francis and Ethan nearby. "Maybe forgiveness really does heal everything." Mark nodded. "It does, especially when love never gives up." As the first stars appeared, Ethan ran to them, laughing. "Mommy Julia, Daddy, come dance with me." They joined him, laughing and spinning under the lights. And for the first time in a long time, there were no lies. No pain. Just a family that had finally learned what love, truth, and forgiveness truly mean. "I don't even know what to think anymore," Mark said quietly. "Are you going to tell Mommy Julia?" Ethan asked. "I don't know." Mark sighed. "She's already stressed with the wedding." "She has to know," Ethan said. "Why?" "Because we're family now," Ethan answered. "Families don't hide secrets." Mark looked at his son and realized he was right. That night, he drove to Julia's apartment. "Hey, love," she greeted him. "What's wrong? You look upset. I need to tell you something." "Did something happen?" she asked, frowning. "It's about my father," Mark said slowly. "He hasn't stopped." "What do you mean?" Mark explained the new recordings Ethan had found. Julia's face went pale. "He wants to invent things about me?" "It looks like it," Mark said. "What if he succeeds? What if he says I have debts? Or that I've been arrested?" "Julia, breathe," Mark said, trying to calm her. "How can I be calm?" She cried. "If he spreads lies again, no one will believe me." "I believe you," Mark said firmly. "And Ethan believes you. That's what matters. What if he cancels our wedding?" "He won't," Mark said. "I won't let him." "I'm scared," Julia whispered. "I am too," he admitted. "But we can't live in fear forever." "It's not just me," she said, touching her belly. "It's our baby. All the more reason to face him," Mark said. "How?" She asked. "We'll think of something," he promised. The wedding day arrived. The church was simple, but beautiful, filled with flowers and sunlight. Julia glowed. 6 months pregnant, her dress perfectly tailored to her round belly. Mrs. Francis cried with joy. "My girl's getting married. What happiness! Thank you for everything," Julia said softly. "You're my heart, Mother." At the altar, Mark waited nervously. Ethan stood beside him in a little black suit, phone tucked in his pocket. "Dad, are you nervous?" Ethan asked. "I am," Mark admitted. "Why?" "You love Mommy Julia." "With all my heart," Mark said. "But marriage is serious." "You'll be happy forever," Ethan said confidently. The music started. Julia appeared at the entrance, walking arm in arm with Mrs. Francis. The guests turned. Mark forgot to breathe. "Wow," he whispered. "What a woman." "That's my mom," Ethan said proudly, beaming. The ceremony began. Everything felt perfect until the church doors suddenly burst open. Everyone turned. Gordon Tremont stormed in, flanked by 2 large security guards. His voice echoed. "This ceremony cannot continue," he shouted. The guests gasped. Mark's face flushed with anger. "Dad, what are you doing?" "I'm saving you from a terrible mistake," Gordon barked. "Get out now." "I will not," Mark said. "This woman is a fraud." Gordon yelled. He marched toward the altar, waving papers. She tricked everyone. Julia went pale. Mr. Gordon, please nothing. He snapped. You don't know who she really is. He turned to the guests. This woman has a criminal record. Gasps rippled through the church. Julia trembled, tears welling. She's been arrested for theft, Gordon shouted, thrusting documents toward the priest. And that's not all. She has debts at several banks. That's a lie, Mark shouted. A lie? Explain these documents then, Gordon demanded. Ethan, who had been quiet until now, suddenly stepped forward. Grandpa, you're a liar, he said loudly. Ethan, get down, Mark said. No, he's making it up, Ethan said. Gordon sneered. How do you know? Boy. Ethan pulled out his phone. Because I recorded you planning these lies. The color drained from Gordon's face. What recording? Want to hear it? Ethan said, and pressed play. Gordon's voice filled the church, booming through the speakers. If you can't find anything on her, invent something. It's not the first time we've done this. The crowd gasped. Murmurs swept through the pews. That's edited, Gordon shouted. It's not, Ethan said firmly, and played more. I want proof she's not right for my family. I don't care what it costs. The guests looked horrified. Julia stood still, tears streaming. Now everyone can see who the liar is, Ethan said bravely. Julia. Gordon started, but she cut him off. No, my turn. She faced the crowd, her voice trembling but strong. Mr. Gordon made up that I was a thief. He planted a watch in my bag to frame me. Mark stepped forward, voice rising. My father forged documents against the woman I love. He lied, humiliated her, and tried to destroy our happiness. Son, I only wanted to protect you, Gordon said. Protect me? Mark shouted. You almost made me lose the most important person in my life. She's no good, Gordon barked. The one who isn't good is you, Mark said coldly. Ethan faced his grandfather again. Grandpa, you're mean. Mommy Julia is good, and you keep making up lies. I don't want to be your grandson anymore. Gordon staggered. How can you say that? Because I don't want to be the grandson of a liar. Mark turned to his father, his voice firm. You're no longer welcome in my life. You can't say that, Gordon snapped. I can, Mark said. You chose pride and prejudice over love. Gordon stood frozen, realizing he had lost everything. You'll regret this, he muttered. No, Dad, Mark said softly. You will. Gordon turned and stormed out of the church, humiliated and alone. Silence fell, then applause broke out. The priest smiled. Well, now that the truth is out, he said kindly, shall we continue? Julia wiped her tears and smiled. We shall, Father. The ceremony resumed. By the authority vested in me, the priest said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mark and Julia kissed to thunderous applause. Ethan jumped between them, cheering. Now we're a real family. The church filled with laughter and tears. Mrs. Francis wept with joy, whispering, Justice at last. Love won. 3 weeks later, Mark and Julia were packing boxes for her move into the mansion when a knock came at the door. A tall woman entered, professional and serious but kind-eyed. Mr. Mark Tremont? That's me, he said. I'm Detective Carla Sanders, she said, flashing her badge. I'm here about an investigation. Mark and Julia exchanged worried looks. What kind of investigation? Mark asked. Forgery and defamation, the detective replied. Julia stiffened. Against who? Detective Sanders glanced at her. Against Mr. Gordon Tremont. Mark froze. What? We received a complaint, she said. With recordings. Very compromising ones. Recordings? Julia asked. Yes, the detective said. They capture your father, arranging to fabricate documents against you both. Who filed the complaint? Mark asked. It was submitted by an attorney, Dr. Matthews. I don't know any Dr. Matthews, Mark said, confused. Just then, Ethan ran into the room. Hi, police lady. The detective smiled. Hello, sweetheart. Are you here to talk about the mean grandpa? She chuckled. I am. I asked Dr. Matthews to help, Ethan said proudly. Mark blinked. Ethan, who is Dr. Matthews? He's my friend's dad. He's a lawyer, Ethan said. I showed him the recordings. He said he'd help. Julia's eyes filled with tears. Oh, my boy. Detective Sanders continued. The charges against Mr. Tremont include 3 crimes: forgery, slander, and defamation. What does that mean? Mark asked quietly. It means, she said, he could face 2 to 6 years in prison. Julia gasped. Prison? Yes, the detective said gently. His crimes are serious. Detective, Mark said slowly. We don't want him to go to prison. Detective Sanders looked surprised. After everything he did? He's still my father, Mark said, and Ethan's grandfather. We don't want it to end like that. Julia nodded gently. We just want peace. The detective studied them for a moment, then said, It's possible to make a deal. What kind of deal? Julia asked. He admits everything publicly and pays a fair settlement. In return, you agree not to press full charges. Mark looked at Julia. What do you think? I accept, she said softly. I forgive him. Are you sure? The detective asked. He hurt you deeply. I'm sure, Julia said. I don't want to carry anger anymore. And I don't want Ethan to grow up knowing his grandpa is in prison. Ethan hugged her tightly. Mommy Julia, you're the best. Detective Sanders smiled faintly. You're remarkable people. Most would want revenge. We just want peace, Mark repeated. She nodded. Then I'll prepare the agreement. It usually takes around 3 months for the investigation, and another few for the final settlement. And if he refuses? Mark asked. Then it goes to trial, the detective said. It could take years. Mark sighed. We'll wait. 2 months later, the detective returned to their home. She was smiling. Good news. He accepted the deal. Julia blinked. He did? Yes. He'll issue a public apology in all major newspapers and pay damages. How much? Julia asked hesitantly. $80,000. The detective said. Julia nearly fainted. That's a lot. It's fair for the harm he caused, Detective Sanders said. Mark pulled Julia close. You deserve that and more. Julia smiled weakly. It's not about the money. It's about moving forward. Ethan clapped his hands. With that money, Mommy Julia can help people who need it. Julia smiled through tears. That's a beautiful idea, my prince. Detective Sanders gathered her things. My work here is done. Congratulations on your happy ending. Julia shook her hand. Thank you for everything. It was an honor to meet a family like yours, the detective said before leaving. Mark exhaled deeply and hugged Julia and Ethan close. It's finally over, he whispered. Yes, Julia said, closing her eyes. Now we can be happy for real this time. For real? Ethan asked. For real, Mark said, smiling. A week later, Gordon Tremont's apology appeared in every major newspaper. I, Gordon Tremont, publicly apologized to Mrs. Julia Parker Tremont for the false accusations I made against her. I acknowledge that I acted with prejudice and harmed an innocent, hard-working person. I deeply regret my actions. Julia read it slowly, her hands trembling. I never thought he'd actually do it. Mark looked over her shoulder. Sometimes people change only when they lose what truly matters. I hope he learned, Julia said softly. 2 years passed. The Tremont mansion looked different now. Warmer, brighter, filled with life. Julia was in the kitchen, humming while preparing lunch. Ethan, now a cheerful 10-year-old, played in the garden with his little sister, Sophia, who had just learned to walk. "Mommy, Julia," Ethan called. "Sophia wants you to see her walk." "I'm coming, sweetheart," Julia said, laughing. Mark walked in, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Look at my beautiful girls," he murmured. Julia smiled. "We're happy, Mark." "And so am I," he said softly. Outside, the garden was full of laughter. Julia and Mark stepped out to watch. The mansion had changed. Part of it had been converted into a community daycare center that Julia managed. She had used part of Gordon's settlement money and a share of Mark's company profits to start the Help Foundation, a project to help working mothers and poor families. "Mark, remember when we met?" she asked, smiling. "How could I forget?" he said. "You gave your last $14 to 2 people you thought were homeless." Julia laughed. "Who would have thought one day I'd have money to help so many?" Mark smiled. "You always had a rich heart. Now the world can see it." Ethan ran toward them, breathless. "Dad, Mom, Sophia's walking by herself." They rushed over as the toddler took a few wobbly steps and then plopped down, giggling. "She walked," Ethan shouted. "Sophia walked." Julia laughed, wiping away a tear. "Our baby is growing up." "And so is Ethan," Mark said proudly. "When I grow up," Ethan said seriously, "I'm going to help people. Just like you." "That's wonderful, son," Mark said. Ethan grinned. "Oh, and guess what? I got a card from Grandpa yesterday." Julia raised her brows. "A card?" "He said he misses us, and that he's trying to be a better person." Julia looked at Mark. "Do you believe him?" Mark nodded slowly. "Maybe people can really change when love gives them another chance." Julia smiled faintly. "Then maybe forgiveness was worth it." Mark took her hand. "It always is." Ethan tugged their sleeves. "Come on, Dad, Mom. Sophia's clapping for us." They knelt beside their daughter as she laughed and clapped her tiny hands, eyes bright like sunshine. Mark hugged them all close. Who would have thought a simple act of kindness could change our lives forever? Julia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I learned something," she said softly. "Family isn't just blood. It's the people who love you through everything." Ethan nodded proudly. "And who tell the truth, even when it's hard." Sophia squealed and clapped again, as if agreeing. The golden light of sunset bathed the garden. The Tremont family stood together, healed, united, and full of hope. For the first time, the mansion truly felt like a home. There were no more lies, no more pain, only laughter, love, and forgiveness. Mark lifted Sophia in his arms. Ethan wrapped his hands around Julia's waist. They all looked toward the fading sky, warm and glowing. "See, Mommy Julia," Ethan said. "We really are a forever family." Julia smiled through happy tears. "Yes, my love. Forever." And as the evening wind rustled the trees, the Tremont family's laughter echoed across the garden, a reminder that kindness, truth, and forgiveness will always win in the end. The end. Thank you for watching. This was Kairo Tales. I love you all.